about trust. The whole election is about trust. Wherever I've gone in the build-up to this election campaign, talking to voters, there's one subject that comes up that they say the main parties don't really want to discuss, and that's immigration. Particularly in vulnerable and excluded communities, they believe there's been far too much. They may be right.
I've actually given 2 speeches on immigration in the last few weeks. I want to discuss the issue. I'm happy to discuss the issue. I get questions on it and I answer the questions. Net inward migration has been falling over the last 3 years. It will probably continue to fall because of the tough Australian point system that we put in. Basically, we created a system 2 years ago where if you don't have a skill and you're coming from outside the European Union, you can't come into the country. If you've got a skill, or if a company is looking for a skill, many of these jobs are advertised in the local job centre first, and they're advertised for 4 weeks. And then they may go to local people as a result of it being advertised. We're gradually bringing now down the number of skilled and semi-skilled workers we need to come into the country.
Recession is bringing it down, isn't it?
No, we're bringing it down because we've got a point system. And we're bringing it down because if you take an occupation like chefs or care workers, some of the biggest occupations where people come into the country with skills to offer, we're now skilling people, training people here in Britain to do these jobs, so they will gradually go off the list of people who can come into the country to work.
But the evidence of last week's figures is that actually a lot of UK-based employers prefer to employ foreigners.
There are cases such as car companies where they're linked to American or Japanese or South Korean or other countries, and they will want to bring in some of the people from these countries.
No, but these are Eastern Europeans that have been coming in.
We don't want to discourage companies that are multinational, international, being able to exchange employees. As far as people coming in from other countries are concerned, I think you'll find that a large number of people who came from Eastern Europe have now gone back. And I think you find that the figure that we've got, I think, is from people who came in 1998. Only a quarter of them are now here. So people, there's about 1 million foreign people from within the European Union in Britain at the moment, but there's also 1 million British citizens in the European Union.
Yeah, but the problem is
that's what it is like being part of the European Union.
If you come to this question of trust, what you said was British jobs for British workers. That didn't happen. Those were British jobs for Eastern European workers.
No, what I meant was, and what I was saying was, we're in a global economy now. People do want to travel. We have got to create in Britain the skills in Britain so that we can compete in the global economy. And I want British young people to be skilled and trained and educated for the jobs that are available. And that's what we've been doing. We've trebled the number of apprenticeships from 70,000 in 1997, virtually dying, to now 250,000.
But there are millions of people who are actually on benefits, trapped on benefits. They're not taking up the work that you say is available, and they're not doing that because they can't afford to, because they're on benefits which will fail before their jobs kick in adequately to pay them.
Well, in our manifesto today, you'll be pleased to note then that not only is any young person who's unemployed for 6 months going to be offered a job or training and has to take it, but anybody who's been long-term unemployed as an adult cannot stay on benefits after a period of time. They will be offered a job and they will have to take it. So it's rights and opportunities, yes, but responsibilities as well. So we are taking action to deal with those people who are unemployed, continue to be unemployed, by saying if you stay unemployed, we will make sure that you are offered a job, but you cannot stay unemployed after you're offered that job. You will have to accept it.
Right, but you're very reluctant to accept that you were wrong about British jobs for British workers. But a lot of people believe you were, just as you were wrong on an end to boom and bust. That really was wrong, and you can say it was wrong, can't you?
Well, what happened is, you know perfectly well.
Was it wrong?
Well, what happened is we had low inflation and low interest rates. We still have low inflation and low interest rates. But it
wasn't an end to boom and bust. We went bust.
But what cut into the British economy was not the usual cycle of inflation, wage rises, high interest rates. We've got low inflation and low interest rates. What actually happened was we had a global banking crisis. Now, that's rather different from what we traditionally had.
And one that you could have foreseen. The Canadians foresaw it, other people foresaw it, we didn't.
I always said in the 1990s that unless you had global supervision, you were facing real problems. And the City of London couldn't do things on their own. You had to have all the different centres working together. And now we're in a situation where we've got the other global centres starting to work together. We've got a global economy, global flows of capital, global sourcing of goods. You need global supervision. One country can't do that on its own. It's got to be the global supervisory system that's agreed by America and Europe and Asia as well. Now that's what's going to prevent a crisis in the future, if we can get that happening.
Meanwhile, it's beginning to happen all over again. You had Lord Mandelson saying that Bob Diamond of Barclays, the leader of the Barclays Investment Bank, is the unacceptable face of banking. You agree with him?
I agree that there are too many people who are trying to get back to the old system.
Do you agree with what he said?
And I agree that we've got to do something, and that's why I'm proposing a global
financial... What he said was that
financial...
Bob Diamond is the unacceptable face of banking. And that's true, isn't it? The
John,
fact is, these banks are getting out of control again. They're too big to fail.
John, look, if you take the revenues of a bank, you've got the capital, and there was undercapitalisation. That was the structural problem that was wrong with our banking system, and we spotted it and we took action first.
But I'm now talking about the now. You've had a cabinet minister saying in the last week that we have somebody on deck who is the unacceptable face of banking. That indicates there's something pretty rotten in the state of banking.
Well, if you do let me finish, I say when you look at banking revenues, capital has got to be increased, and there's no certainty on that. Remuneration has been too high, and that's what I've been saying for many, many months. That's one of the reasons why we're proposing a bank levy, but it's also one of the reasons why we've got far more controls over remuneration packages, over share options, over bonuses. And what I want to see is other countries prepared to do what we are prepared to do, so that you have a global and not just one nation solution to this. If we just do it ourselves, and we are the only people to do it, there's no doubt we'll be undercut by other countries. But if we do it as an international community acting together, then we can sort this problem out. Look, for 10 years, I've been saying global financial supervision is the answer.
But it's not just remuneration, it's about credit. The fact is the credit's still not flowing from the banks. You asked people here, even in Vauxhall, they've had to get it from you, not from the banks. Why wouldn't the banks lend to Vauxhall?
But that's what I was talking about originally, John, about the banks. They've been undercapitalised, and they've got to be recapitalised so that they are able to lend in situations where there is some risk. And we want to recapitalise our banks, and more will still have to be done.
Well, that's at that end. Why don't we now go down to the other end, where people are going to have to pay for this?
Absolutely.
Do you think you're being candid enough with the British electorate about what confronts them after this election? Whoever wins, is it not a fact that the pain is going to be extreme? There's no pain in your manifesto. The pain is unspoken. Only Alistair Darling said the other day that Mrs. Thatcher's cuts were nothing like as deep as these are going to have to be.
Look, we've set out...
Do you accept that? Is it right?
We've set out the figures. So £20 billion, 11 billion from efficiency savings, which we know we can get by 12-13, £4 billion from changes in public sector pay and pensions, and £5 billion from less resources available to lower priority departments. So we've set out what we will do. The next stage is, can you get a deficit reduction plan but also maintain and protect your frontline services?
But you've never,
so we will protect health and our schools and our policing, while at the same time cutting the deficit by half.
No government has ever achieved its target of waste reduction. If you don't manage to make those savings in excess performance inside government departments, back office as you call it, then where's it going to come from? It will have to come from tax increases.
I think
VAT, income tax, why rule it out?
I think people know. In 1997, I came in as Chancellor, froze public spending for 2 years. Take the tough decisions. Last spending review, we cut the expenditure of 7 departments. We are prepared to take all the tough decisions that are necessary. But what I'm not prepared to do is to go down the Conservative road, which in a search for an income tax or a national insurance headline means that health and the guarantees that we've made on health will not be upheld, would mean that schools and the guarantees we're making about schools will not be held, and policing, the guarantees we're making about policing will not be held. That is the Conservative policy, to move away from the guarantees.